Hey guys, my name's Elon of Elon's Forest, and here I bring you Erik Lucas. I apologize for the recording quality in this video. I never meant to publish it. Enjoy!
It's more about just being cycled. You want there to be biofilm, you want there to be algae. Shrimp are scavengers, so they can, this is a buffet to them. It may not look pretty, but if you want to have a successful shrimp tank, in my opinion, it's the way to go.
Needs to be established.
Exactly. You want the biofilms, you want the algae. Fairy shrimp, you can tell it's pregnant. The yellow things on its belly are the eggs. Real low quality, patchy red. 12, 15 years ago, this was basically about the only shrimp in the hobby in the United States. Now there's tons. And we'll move on to some of those. This is a fire red cherry shrimp. That's that same shrimp, but being bred and bred and bred to bring out the best red that they can. As you can see, the full red color on the legs, that's important. Just a beautiful shrimp. They call these red really. These are all Neocaradinas first.
What does that mean?
There's two main I guess they do genuses, Neocaridina and Caridina, that we keep in our aquariums. Neocaridina tend to be more of a neutral to higher pH shrimp, where the Caridina tend to be lower, sub 7, like 6.4, 6.6. Anything sub 7 usually works for them. 6.8 is kind of borderline. That's why I use the ADA Amazonia with RO water. That'll keep the pH low for you. That's a yellow Neocaridina, just kind of a basic one. You can see the legs don't have much color. It's kind of just a basic grade. And then you move on to, the back line, yellow Neocaridina, a little more expensive. They're called, sometimes called a 24 karat gold Neocaridina. And then same shrimp, same Neocaridina, orange. It's called orange sakura. See, that shrimp has eggs as well. Obviously it's a female. And you have blue velvets. These were the first blue Neocaradinas to come into the United States. As you can see, real light blue, real faint blue. But as you give people time to work on them, you can line breed to bring out the best colors, bring out certain patterns. That's the newest of the blue shrimp, really called Blue Dreams. As you can see, a lot darker blue. And this is probably, right now, this is the newest Neocaridina. They're called Green Jades. They tend to be a little bit more expensive than, cherry shrimp or these. For good high quality green jades are about $15.
Do most of these originate in many places?
Most of the mass breeding of them is done in Taiwan. Okay. They have big farms that pump out millions of these shrimp. They do a lot of ponds. They do outdoor ponds. But the problem with a lot of the Neocaradinas is being that they're in outdoor ponds, they're susceptible to a lot of diseases. Birds poop in the water. There's a disease going around in the Neocaradinas right now that are being imported that I'll get to in a little bit. That they believe it's from birds pooping in the water outside, and then it's not good for the shrimp. And then shrimp. Most people are aware. The Amano shrimp. Starting to move into Caridina shrimp here. Amanos can be kept in all kinds of water conditions. They're not like the typical Caridina that need the really low pH. So you can have them in a 7.4 pH tank, a 6.6. They do fine. This is a Cardinal Sulawesi. These require a higher pH. They're about a pH 8.2 or so and a higher temperature. Most shrimp do best around 68 to 72 degrees. These guys need to be about 78 degrees or so. And I've never kept this kind, but from what I hear, they're very hard to get to breed. But once they start breeding, they're like any shrimp. They breed like rabbits.
Where are they from?
They're from Sulawesi. It's Borneo area. And this is a Caridina serrata called Mora Blue. And this is another Caridina serrata. It's a tangerine tiger, and I brought some of those for the auction. In my opinion, this is the easiest shrimp to keep. They do well in the low pH. They do well in the high pH. I currently keep them in the low pH, but I've been successful both ways with them. I'm just converting all my tanks to the same method to make it easier for me.
How well do these shrimp that you're breeding do in a community fish tank?
They're an expensive dinner.
Don't
Yeah,
just shrimp.
Yes, it's basically, you know how fish operate. If it can even
Yeah,
come
they're
close,
always hungry.
if it can even come close to fitting in their mouth, they're gonna try.
Mhm.
And worst case scenarios that I started originally keeping, and I actually entered my shrimp in the International Shrimp Competition in Chicago this year, and I won first place for my Blue Tigers for their category. So it's kind of what I'm known for in the United States, even though my tank's struggling right now. Even though I'm the shrimp expert, I have problems too.
What kind of categories do they have for them when you get them in show?
You know, I have a part at the end of my show, or in my
Okay.
slide that'll go into the competition. That's a royal blue tiger. Same shrimp basically, but without the black stripes. They're bred to be fully royal blue. And then you have your standard crystal black shrimp. This is the type of shrimp you may see at like your local fish store. Crystal black, crystal reds, the cherry shrimps, the yellow Neocaradinas. Those are the ones you tend to see at your average fish store. The good thing is shrimp are starting to pick up across the United States. And you're starting to see more local fish stores stock them because they have customers asking for them. That's a crystal red shrimp, a little bit higher grade than your standard crystal red shrimp. You can see the red on the legs, and you know, pretty good color on the body. It's not very patchy. This is when I first started out. This was besides the blue tigers, this is my second favorite shrimp. That is a crystal red shrimp, but they call it a smiley face. If you look, its eyes are the eye, and then the dots its nose, and then they were called German K14s or smiley face. But I had a colony of those going for yeah. So this is just a quick guide on the patterns for the crystal red shrimp. It's not used as much anymore for the crystal red shrimp. Most of the grading now is done by the quality of the colors and the saturation of the color in the legs. But you can see the S and A grades on the bottom have 3 or 4 full red bands. And then as those bands start getting broken up or less, it's a higher grade pattern. So as you move up like the V band, the S plus grade, you can see that the band's not it's not straight, it looks like a V. And then over you have the no, it looks like a no entry sign they call it, or Hinamaro for Japanese. So basically how it used to be was the more white and the less red, the better grade they were. Now it's more of the quality of the colors that are on them. Now these have been bred to be, they call them pure red line for the reds, or like the crystal blacks that we saw are pure black lines, where they try to get the black as they can, obviously the red as red as they can, and the white as full as they can. And then you want the leg coverage, which is really hard to do. It takes years and years and years. But then they want the legs to either be white or red, depending on the breeder's preference. And those shrimp are still, they've been around for a long time, the pure lines, but they're still worldwide the most expensive shrimp. They sometimes sell in Japan for $7,000 to $8,000 for one shrimp.
Well, they also have koi, so.
Yeah.
So,
Obviously, it depends on the shrimp itself and the genetics that are in that shrimp. If you buy quality shrimp to start with, which is obviously a little more expensive to start with, there should be less culling involved. But there's always a market on Craigslist or in Facebook forums to get rid of whatever you want. If you want all Mozura flower SSS grades and you have 100 shrimp in your tank and only 8 of them are that, and you want to get rid of the other 92, yeah, you can put them on Craigslist and sell them. Like I said, a lot of local fish stores are carrying them now. They may give you a little bit of credit for them, but there's a pretty good demand for them.
Genetics, are they mapped out at all as far as dominance, recessive?
Yeah, the red in the B shrimp that we just looked at, the red is the recessive gene, the black is the dominant.
Okay. Wow. So are there websites with all the alleles and?
I don't know if it's gotten that deep yet. In the U.S. especially, it's a fairly new hobby. Obviously in Taiwan, Asian countries, and like a lot of European countries, they're pretty far ahead of us. But I don't know if they're investing the money to actually look into it and see what's actually causing this stuff. Like the orange eye in the shrimp is a recessive gene as well. They believe that they're blind. But the orange eye is recessive, so if you breed two orange eyes together, you should get all orange eyes, because they all both have the, little R, if you do the Punnett squares or whatever it is. Get these offspring from the crystal reds and the crystal blacks. They, now if you have pure red line or pure black line, these should pop out either never, or if they do pop out, they should be perfectly white, no patchiness or whatever, because the red or the black's just been bred out of them. These are blue bolts. You can see the one on the right has, the blue head and a faint blue to the body. That kind of be like a lower to middle grade. And then the one to the left, you can see the blue in the body's kind of a little more saturated. Could be more of a middle grade. These are Taiwan bees. They're Caridina as well, but they call them Taiwan bees, the blue bolts. That's a high grade blue bolt. And then this picture doesn't show up well for whatever reason, but this, in 2016, the first USA shrimp competition at the Aquatic Experience in Chicago, an American actually won the whole competition, best of show. And it was this shrimp here, a blue bolt, like this one I just showed you before. These are all the same shrimp, but the blue on that is like perfect. He beat out entries from Taiwan, people that have been doing it for 20 years, people from Europe that are like, well-known breeders, and the guy from the USA won best in show. That's a black panda Taiwan bee. You can see the one with basically the even amount of black and white they call pandas. The one like to the right that has like just a little patch of white on it, they call King Kongs. So it'll be black King Kongs, black pandas, they're Taiwan bees. Yeah.
Are all the shrimp like what you have and know of, are they all egg layers?
They don't, the baby, they're a high order. So the babies are born miniature versions of the parents. They hold the eggs in their pleopods and fan them, and then about 30 days later, give or take, depending on the temperature of the tank.
So they're kind of in between an egg layer and a live bear.
So
they hatch live. Taiwan bees, they call them wine reds and red King Kongs. And that's a German red pinto. There's white body, red head, and white spots on the head. They also have a version called the black pinto, which is white body, black head with white spots on it. Okay, so we'll get into setting up a tank. Different shrimp have different requirements, so if you want to do neocaradinas, you don't need any special substrate or anything, like clay sand or pea gravel, all that works fine. Caridina, they need the lower pH, 6.8 or less, so the best way to do that and keep it consistent is with a buffering substrate, like Amazonia, or Prodibio has a brand of soil out now, Brightwell has soil for shrimp.
Will they survive in a bare bottom tank with
the
sufficient plants?
The problem with the bare bottom tank, if you're going neocaridina aquarium, plants obviously are fine. Like I said, I don't know of any plant that's harmful to shrimp. And it's good for them because it sucks up the excessive organics in the water, the ammonia and everything. Leaf litter, the standard oak leaf, beech leaf. You can use banana leaves, Indian almond leaves. They're great for antibacterial and antifungal. Their antifungal properties. They provide tannins to the water, which can help keep the pH a little bit lower. The shrimp pick off them. They eat them on the hardwood leaves like the beech and the oak. You're gonna want, they don't necessarily eat the leaf itself, but they eat as it breaks down and microorganisms, are eating the leaves. They'll eat the microorganisms that are eating the leaves. But then there's also food leaves like mulberry, walnut, where they'll actually eat the leaf. You'll drop, it's best, I think, to boil it a little bit to kind of soften it a little bit. And then you can put it in the tank and they'll be all over it and the leaf will be gone in a day or two. Same with like spinach, kale, obviously, do organic vegetables if you're gonna do it, make sure they're, wash them very well, no pesticides or anything on them. But yeah, they love vegetables and leaves. And leaves are pretty cheap too, it's not, as long as it's kind of hard when you live in a city because like the city I live in, they spray for mosquitoes. I live in the middle of a bunch of rice fields. So they spray for mosquitoes constantly, so I wouldn't pull a leaf out of my front yard and throw it in a shrimp tank. But if you live out in the country or if you're out hiking somewhere, yeah, you find some oak leaves or beech or whatever, you can always double check online. Quite a few of the forums have a list of leaves that you can use. But for the most part, anything, fruit tree leaves, they all seem to work pretty well. Mosses, obviously a lot of shrimp tanking place for the babies. Even though if they're in an all shrimp tank, they still like to hide when they're born. You won't see them out moving around or, so the moss is good for that. Wood, a lot of people use Malaysian driftwood or cholla wood. The cholla is like a cactus, a dried cactus, and it's got like little holes in it, and the shrimp like to go in it and hang out. Sometimes, when they molt, which they will frequently, they're very vulnerable for a couple hours. And like I said, shrimp are opportunistic eaters. So if they see a shrimp struggling with a molt, they'll be on it in seconds eating it. So unless they're pretty quick at getting out of their exoskeleton and finding a hiding spot or moving away, they're going to become dinner.
That's how I lost my last one. But I didn't believe that's what was happening.
Yeah, no, when they molt, it takes about 2 hours for their exoskeleton to harden up again. And I mean, the shrimp know it, they're smart. If they see it struggling, if it's having problems, let's say getting its legs out of the exoskeleton, before it even has a chance to get its legs out, it's probably going to be eaten.
So are they smart enough to like hide when they're vulnerable?
Yeah, usually
So
they'll
we give them hiding
molt,
places?
and then if you watch it when it happens, they'll molt, and like their legs they're kind of like jelly. There's no their exosskeleton's just soft at that point. There's nothing keeping them together, kind of, So they kind of shoot around the tank and try to find a spot to hide. Yeah, definitely. To make sure that they're not going to raise the KH or the TDS in your aquarium. It's a hard enough battle to try to keep everything in line, let alone have a stone leaching stuff into your water that you're trying to compensate for constantly. I don't keep any stone in any of my tanks, but a lot of people that like shrimp also like Planet aquariums and aquascaping. So it's kind of, just make sure that it's an inert stone. Filtration, so, shrimp have a really small bioload. I mean, even a tank with 50 or 100 shrimp is probably less of a bioload than 2 goldfish or 3 goldfish. So, they don't need crazy filtration. Like I said, I use sponge filters. I've done hang-on back filters before. I always over filter. If it says it's a sponge filter for a 50-gallon aquarium, I throw in a 10-gallon aquarium just to always be extra safe. But no, a sponge filter is cheap and it's effective.
With the sponge filter, how often do you take them out and clean them?
On the dual sponges, it's best to just clean one at a time to keep the bacteria on the other one. So what I do with the dual sponges is I get a little bit of tank water in a bowl or whatever. You don't want to use RO water because it's hypotonic or whatever. It can kill the bacteria in the sponge. And you don't want to use your tap water because there's a chlorine problem in it that'll kill the bacteria as well. So you just put it in some of your tank water, squeeze it out a bunch, should have some brown mucky stuff come out of it, put it back on, and you're good to go maybe every few weeks, if that. You'll notice the flow start to slow down,
Okay.
and if it's either, there's 2 things that it's gonna be if the flow's slowing down. Is the filters are either mucking up, or where the air line connects in, for whatever reason, those little holes get clogged a lot. So I actually use a water pick like you'd use for your teeth. And I just put it in the hole and put it on full blast, and it shoots water all over. I get in trouble from my fiance, but it blasts everything out of it. I mean, you'll see.
Limestones, dolomites.
I know. I think like what they call it, Sirius stone, SEIRYU stone. That tends to leach, I think, a little bit.
I don't know. Those artistic names mean
Yeah.
nothing to a geologist.
Exactly.
I've never made
The trade names, like
yeah,
anything.
exactly. What I've had good success with is good old Sierra granite.
Okay.
There's just
Oh.
almost nothing soluble in those.
Well, what's the test? You put vinegar on the rock, and if it
10% hydrochloric acid is the
or
real
or,
test.
or yeah, do they CL on it?
Yeah.
And
if
if it
fizzes,
bubbles up,
you
then
you don't want it.
you don't want it in your aquarium if
But
it
there's
doesn't.
no limestone or calcite in Sierra granite.
Okay.
And what's really cool about it is, it stays bright. I mean,
Okay.
algae doesn't really grow on it, so it looks good for a long period of time.
And you use that in some of your aquariums right now? Or?
Everyone. And
What do you rate? What do you do? Fish or shrimp or
I just do fish.
fish?
And the way to get good stuff, good fresh rocks, is you want fresh surfaces. You don't want rocks that have algae, that have lichens growing on them, or
So do you
weathered surfaces.
scrub them real well before, or just don't
No,
put those
I
ones
do-
that have that on it at all?
Basically, find yourself a road cut up in the Sierras, where
Okay.
you've got fresh surfaces, and then you use some eye protection and hit it with a 2-pound sledge, and they'll break.
Okay.
And when you get off fresh surfaces, that's what you'll want.
Okay.
And-
Maybe I'll have you send me a picture, or give, I don't know if you have a picture on your phone, I'll look at later what that stone looks like.
I do, yeah.
Okay, so water, you know, basically I talked about it earlier, your Caridinas, you want your water to be low pH. You want your TDS to be around 120 or so, your general hardness around, 3 to 5. You know, opinions vary on it. Some people like to keep their GH for their Caridinas at 5.6. I'm more in the 3.4 range with a TDS between 100, 120. Some people like the 5.6, TDS 150 or so. But like the pure red lines and the pure black lines that we talked about earlier, they tend to like a little higher TDS and a little higher GH. Those are my only shrimp, the only Caridina shrimp that I keep at like TDS 150, GH 5-ish. Everything else I keep at TDS 110 to 120, GH 3 to 4, and then KH 0.
Neocaridina too?
Neos you can do higher GH, higher TDS, higher pH. For most people, their tap water would work fine for Neos. Here, that's not the case. Like my tap water, it comes out like TDS 240, a GH of like 7 or 8, and that's basically perfect for Neocaridina. I just don't keep Neocaridina anymore. When I redid my room, I did all Caridinas.
So how about for us with TDS
So-
of 60?
So what you're
for
gonna wanna do
Neocaridina?
is you're gonna add, I'd recommend a remineralizer that does both GH and KH. They make shrimp-specific ones, or I'm sure there's, just regular ones that probably aren't as expensive as the shrimp-specific ones. I mean, KH, you could use baking soda, GH, Epsom salt, is that what it is, GH, Epsom salt, I believe. You could do something like that, or you can just buy a remineralizer. Like I sell a couple on my website, you can get a tub of it that, if you had like one 10-gallon shrimp tank, it'd probably last you 2 years, for like $15, $20. And you just mix it and come to the right TDS. Best thing to do is first time you ever do it, test your TDS, test the GH, so you know, when I have a TDS of 150, the GH is this, and then just remember that, and then it's way easier to test the TDS with just a TDS pen than to test the GH with the liquids and drops every time. So just find your target TDS, and then when you're remineralizing each time, then you just, write TDS and you already know that, well, that's GH6, GH7. But yeah, that's what I would do. Like I said, your guys' tap water is different than probably 98% of the rest of the country, where it's perfect for Neocaridinas for most people right out of the tap. Obviously, when you dechlorinate it, but the GH and the TDS are pretty good for most people.
So you said 250 was perfect, but you tell us to shoot to what, 120, 150?
120, 150 for the Caridinas. For the Neocaridinas, there's such a wide range that they do well in. There's some people I know that keep them in Caridina parameters and the TDS of 120.
Okay.
There's some people that claim they keep them in TDS 1200, well water. Honestly, a lot of it has to do with trying to match the person that you're getting them from, match their parameters, and once you get them established in your tank, keeping the parameters consistent. If they're doing great at TDS 600, then leave them at TDS 600. Don't think, the speaker said they got to be at 250, so I'm going to do 250. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Shrimp, that's extremely important. So maintenance of your shrimp tank, like I said, 25% weekly water change. I don't recommend, I know like when I used to have a fish tank, sometimes I'd kind of stir the substrate up a little bit to get the muck out of it. With shrimp, I don't think that's a good idea. It can cause ammonia spikes. Like I said, they're fairly finicky, and especially when you're moving into the $100, $200, $400, $500 shrimp. For me, I don't want to do anything that's potentially going to be my fault that kills them, that I know is my fault. Somebody had sent me a plant with some shrimp or whatever, and I just threw it in the tank or whatever. And I don't know the name, I'm not a real big plant guy, I don't know the name of it, but it grew in the water column, and it sent roots down and it got all rooted in the sand. And it probably grew for a year or so, and I thought, well, I don't want this plant. I can't even see the shrimp. It like took over the tank, so I was ripping it all out, and all the roots were just all deep in the sand and everything, and it totally mucked everything up, all the sand got overturned, everything. The next day I went into the room, and there was about 400 dead shrimp in the tank. So it must have had, I'm assuming, an ammonia spike from stirring up everything, and the filters just couldn't keep up with it. But as a business, I get to write that off though, so. You see in the picture there, that's the ovary behind the head, and you can see the eggs in there. It may be hard for people to see further back, but you can see the eggs in there. So basically, the female reaches her maturity at 4 to 6 months. The male's a little bit sooner, 3 to 4 months. The female, you saw the ovary there, you can see they call it a saddle, because it kind of looks like a saddle on a horse or whatever. It's a little area behind the head there. And when she's ready to be impregnated, she'll molt first. She lets out a pheromone that lets the males know, hey, there's a female that's ready to get pregnant. And you'll notice the males zipping from every corner of the tank at, ultrasonic speeds trying to find her. And she'll usually molt like that, and then she'll go hide in like the corner or under a piece of wood or whatever. And then the first male to find her, will impregnate her usually. But the males don't stop at that point. They still smell it in the water, and so she'll try to hide even more after that. And there are, people have reported, having too many males in a tank. If you have a tank with 10 males and 1 female, well, that female molts, and those 10 males find her and sometimes kill her, because they're all trying to impregnate her. So once she gets pregnant, those eggs will come out of the saddle, and they'll come down and they'll be deposited in her pleopods. And then depending on the water temperature, the higher the water temperature, the faster the gestation. The lower the water temperature, the longer the gestation. She'll hold them on her pleopods for about 24 to 30 days. I've had some shrimp hold for 40 days before. But she'll be constantly fanning them, bringing oxygenated water to them. And then when the babies are born, they kind of just shoot out of the mom. They're not all at one time. One may come and then 2 hours later another one. But they're miniature versions of their parents when they're born. So as you can see, that's some babies. You can see the eyes on the eggs developing in there.
Some of them were even colored, so it's...
Yeah. And then that's a newborn baby shrimp. That's 4 hours old. So,
Nice picture.
yeah, that's not my picture. That's, in fact, I forgot to give photo credit to it, but that's Steve Kolditz. He's a German breeder. He sent me that picture for my presentation. He takes really good pictures, and I asked him to send a picture of a newborn shrimp. And as you can see, it's a miniature version of the parents.
How big are they when they pop out?
What was that?
How big is the bird?
You can see them with the naked eye, but they're not very big,
Millimeters?
Oh, no.
Pencil lead.
In hand?
Yeah, pencil lead?
Yeah.
Pencil lead?
Pencil lead maybe, yeah. And they grow fairly quick. But yeah, right away they're very small. The easiest way for me to see them is if they're on the glass, like eating algae, and I can look from the outside of the tank and just see the little shrimp there eating it.
Are they colored at the start, or are they clear?
This shrimp will be clear as an adult, so it's clear. A lot of times the cherry shrimp, it kind of depends. Some will have a little bit of color to them, like a blue shrimp, maybe a faint blue, and it'll get darker as it gets older. And a red shrimp, maybe a lighter red, and they get more red as they get older. Usually within the first, maybe first 4 or 5 days, their color should develop, and you should kind of know what you have. Patterns, you can start to see patterns on them. It's really hard to see. It's easy if you have like a macro lens on your phone or whatever. You can kind of zoom in and see, oh, this one's going to have, this has this pattern on its head or its legs, or and then they change as they get older as well. Every time they molt, their pattern may change a little bit. They may get more spots on them. Every shrimp's a little different. So caring for the babies.
So are the males smaller?
Males are a little bit smaller, and they tend to not be as colorful. Now, granted, a very well-colored male tends to be more valuable than a very well-colored female. Because the male can, impregnate 100 different shrimp, where the female can only, can do 1 batch at a time. And especially with the Neocaradinas, like a really nice red male, like a dark red male, it would be more valuable than a nice dark red female, because 95% of the females are going to be that nice dark red, or maybe 5 to 10%, if you're lucky, of the males will have that color. A good amount of leaf litter is always really good for them, because they'll hide in the leaves as well as eat off. Basically the first few weeks, well, I'd say the first week, maybe 2 weeks the babies are born, they're pretty immobile. You may see them once a day move a little bit, but for the most part, where they end up is where they're going to be for a couple days. And if there's not a food source there for them to eat, they're going to die. They molt quite a bit, so they need to have that nutrition. So leaves are good because they'll hang out on the leaves. You'll see a lot of babies hiding in the moss. You know, you'll see some on the substrate, but you can also feed like a powder food for the babies, which kind of disperses all across the tank, and they should get a little bit of it. But for about the first four weeks or so, they hide a lot. And then about 4 to 6 weeks, you'll see them start to come out and start eating with the, you know, if you drop a food pellet in, you know, at about 4 to 6 weeks, you'll see them start coming out eating with their parents. But they don't come out for as long, you know, the parents are just out doing whatever all day.
So will the adults go after them and eat them when they're molting and everything?
If they're molting and struggling, yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, they're opportunistic scavengers. If there's a meal in front of them, they're not gonna pass it up. So, but it's pretty rare, you know, you don't see too much of that. I mean, if your shrimp are having problems molting, that's signs of a bigger problem in the tank. You know, if they're not able to get out of their exoskeleton easily, then you have something going on with your TDS or your hardness of your water. Something's not to their liking. It should be like once they start, you know, it's like basically a 2 to 3 second process. If they're struggling, it should be like 2 or 3 seconds. If they're not, it's like a millisecond. Like you can watch it, you can see them pull, and you can see like their legs start coming out, and then they just make a real quick movement, and the skin's off, and they're trying to hide somewhere.
Yeah, I've never seen them do it.
If you go on YouTube, if you go on YouTube, there's some really cool videos of it. And then at 8 weeks, they're considered juvenile shrimp, and they basically kind of act like adults and come out. They're not quite ready to breed yet, but they'll be a lot more visible. Common diseases. I'll try to.
So you recommend keeping them together, or you think it's better to put the babies in a separate?
Keep them
tank?
together. Might as well just keep them together. I'll kind of get through this. We're kind of starting to get late here. These are some common diseases. We got Bordetella. You can see all the white fuzz on the face. Treated pretty easily with a salt dip. I think the best way to do it is catch the shrimp that are affected in a net, and then have you could use the aquarium salt, and I think it's like maybe like I usually do like maybe like a half teaspoon per little cup, you know, of water. Mix it all up, and I just keep them in the net, and I put the net inside the water with the salt for about a minute or so, and then I have another cup set up with their tank water in it, and I'll move them to the tank water for 5 minutes, let them kind of recover. Move them back to the salt again, put them back in their water again, kind of let them recover a little bit. The salt doesn't, you know, hurt them being in there for a minute, but if you left them in there for hours, they die. So I used to do that a few times, and these should fall off. Same with Scudarella japonica, same thing. They attach to the shrimp's rostrum. Same thing, salt dip works well to get rid of them. This is the new, I guess it's a protozoan that we're seeing in the hobby. It attaches to the pleopod area usually. It's called Elabiopsidae. And this is what they think the bird poop in the ponds in Taiwan is causing. And this eventually just consumes the whole shrimp. You know, it can't molt, it can't move, and it's not a good sign in your tank. And the recent reports are that it can lay dormant for a little bit too. And so people think, oh, I got these shrimp, they look great. And then 4 months later, they have a shrimp that looks like that in their tank, because the conditions become right in their tank for it to start taking off. There's no known 100% cure for it. Rachel O'Leary, she did a quick cure and Gordon Riddick dipped foods and then fed them the foods, and she said she had some success. Some people think it feeds off of light. So if you keep it like in a dark area, you know, no light for 2 or 3 weeks, it can do something to it. Most cases that I've heard of it is there's no coming back from it.
Can it spread from one shrimp to another?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you have one in a tank, it's probably gonna infect the rest of the tank.
Will it affect your fish also?
Sorry, what was
Will it
that?
affect the fish in the tank also?
I don't believe so. I think it's a shrimp-specific one, and it's only been found on Neocaridinas. And that's probably because the Caridina are more higher-valued shrimp, and they're kept indoors. They're raised indoors, where the Neocaridinas are raised outdoors in ponds.
And they're pretty sure it's created by the Taiwan fish, actually, that's the problem.
A specific bird.
Yeah.
So do you recommend like doing shrimp dip for all new shrimp coming in no matter what? Because
You know,
that's
the Caridina, I wouldn't worry at all. These diseases here are basically, the stuff that can be treated that I've shown so far is all Neocaridina specific. You know, I love local fish stores. I shop at my local fish store as much as I can. I have no problem paying extra to give them money instead of Amazon. But when it comes to Neocaridina shrimp, they're all importing them they're all getting them from the same people that are importing them from Taiwan. You know, unless they're giving credit to a hobbyist that's bringing them in or whatever. And you see these in way too many of the, way too many of the Caridina shrimp that are being sold. Petco's are even carrying around PetSmarts, and you know, it's almost daily. You know, I'm a member of USA Freshwater Shrimp and Plants Facebook group, and it's almost daily you see somebody goes, oh, I got these new shrimp from wherever or whatever, and they post a picture, and we're like, oh no. You know, because it'll consume the tank. It'll eventually kill all of them. A lot of people, if they notice it, they get rid of the shrimp, they bleach the tank, they do whatever and start over.
So
And
get your shrimp from hobbyists.
that tends to be the best, but like I said, we found out recently that it may lay dormant for months. So it could be, you know, somebody bought, you know, a shrimp from a local fish store that was pregnant, and that shrimp had babies, and 3 months later, those babies are ready to sell, and those babies look clean, no problem with them. They go to your tank, something in your tank sets it off, and it really needs to come to the point where, you know, the importers say to the exporters, we're not bringing these in anymore until you can guarantee we're not gonna have these problems. So,
There's 4 main farms in Taiwan that raise Caridina, and those 4 farms are not doing quality control. They don't care. I mean, you can watch videos on YouTube where they're catching tens of thousands at a time with nets. They don't care.
them it's all profit, you know, you know, until there's a mode, you know, until there's the profit motive comes in, and then people say, we're not gonna buy them anymore until we deal with this problem. They're not gonna do anything about it, you know. They know they have a market of people that are still gonna buy them. They know the local fish stores are still, you know, they're gonna still buy them from the exporter. You know, it's a cycle that won't end until people say, hey, we're not gonna put up with it anymore. We're not gonna buy these shrimp until you deal with it. And this is muscle necrosis. You can see the white, milky part of the body. The tissue starts dying in the shrimp, and then it'll eventually kill the shrimp. This can be spread from shrimp to shrimp as well. And there's really no treatment for it. People say you can do a lot of large water changes, but anytime I've ever seen a shrimp with that, I remove it right away, cull it, and it goes down the toilet. The common pests in a shrimp tank, you have the copepod. Basically in a shrimp tank, you don't have fish, most likely. So there's a lot of things that would normally be consumed by your fish in a fish tank that won't be eaten in a shrimp tank. So you'll see the copepods going around all on the bottom. Rhabdocela are the little worms that, you know, normally like guppies or whatever would pick off the glass and eat, or whatever fish you have. But shrimp obviously don't eat them, so that they have no predator in the tank.
Are those Planaria?
No, these are Rhabdocela. I'll get to Planaria. Planaria have a triangle head.
How to get rid of them?
Those, they're not harmful. They don't do anything to the shrimp. It's a sign of a healthy ecosystem. Same with the copepods. You know, some people don't like seeing them in their tank, but there's no predator in the tank to eat them, but they're not doing any harm. So it's like, to me, I wouldn't treat the tank or do anything that's gonna potentially hurt your shrimp to try to get rid of these guys. You could feed less. You know, these guys tend to flourish when there's a lot of extra uneaten food in the tank. So you can cut back on your feedings.
What's the scale on those? How big are these?
Oh, these guys are tiny. They're like microscopic. They kind of just, it's kind of like a herky-jerky moving around the tank.
Can you
But
see
the-
them with the naked eye?
Yes, but very, very small. They're even smaller than a baby shrimp. These guys are a little bit bigger. They vary though. You know, obviously babies are real small, but as they get bigger, they mainly crawl on the glass, and they're very noticeable.
So do they stretch out and then grab a piece of glass and then the back part of their body comes?
Yeah, these guys do. Yeah, they'll kind of stretch out, and then then they'll get thick again. Limpet, you know, it's like a snail that's like flat, harmless, but. So now we'll start getting into the harmful ones. Hydra. And there's 2 different kinds of hydra. There's green hydra, and then there's, it's kind of green, but it's not supposed to be green. Green hydra tend to not cause any problems, but these hydra, they'll sting the shrimp, especially the babies. And there's actually, somebody caught a video of it, I'm not sure where, maybe on YouTube, of a hydra actually stinging the shrimp, little baby shrimp, and then pulling it in and eating it. So these guys you don't want in your tank. These can be treated with dog dewormer, bendazole, I believe it is. And you treat 0.1 grams per 10 gallons. So not 1 gram, but 0.1 grams. And these guys, basically within, you know, you can spot treat with them as well, but you obviously treat the whole tank too. But if you spot treat them, you'll notice like right away, once that dog dewormer hits them, they shrink right up and they start dying. There's also other, shrimp tank specific products to kill these, like no Planaria, or there's a Z1 from SL Aqua does a good job. This is a Planaria. You can see the difference. They have more of a triangular head, and they have eyes that you can actually see. These guys as well they're like a shrimp, they're opportunistic. If they see a shrimp struggling, molting, or if they can sneak up on a shrimp, they will kill it and eat it. I mean, they're worms though, they're pretty slow, but they somehow they still find a way. And then scuds, there's a couple different kind of scuds. Some are predatory. They'll definitely eat your plants. Mosses they devour, and they'll also eat shrimp. Some common mistakes I see are overfeeding. You don't, shrimp are tiny and they're eating all day in the aquarium. They don't need a big pellet every day if there's 10 of them.
If you have algae on the sides of your tank walls, do they need additional feeding?
They would probably live for months and months in the tank, but I don't feed too often anymore because my tanks are really mature and there's a lot of algae, a lot of biofilm, some leaf litter. But every once in a while I like throwing a piece of food there and watching a big food pile, and kind of seeing what's in the tank, But I wouldn't say, I mean, if you have a lot of algae and stuff there, I wouldn't think there's any need to feed more than once a week.
And if you have blackbeard algae or string algae?
They won't eat that.
And so?
No, they may pick off whatever little microorganisms are living on it, but they won't actually eat it. Hands in the tank. I've also lost an aquarium of shrimp by putting my hands in a tank that I just petted my parents' dog that had flea medicine on it, and I didn't wash my hands afterwards. It was actually the second tank I ever had. It was about 8-9 years ago. It was when crystal reds and crystal black shrimp were still like $20, $25 a piece. And I had about 40 or 50 of them I bought to breed, and same scenario. I put my hands in there, messed around. Within 30 minutes, they're all on their backs twitching, and I had to kind of think about what happened, and I realized, oh, my parents had put flea medicine on their dog, and I sat there and petted it for 20 minutes and didn't wash my hands, and
At least you figured it out.
Yeah, thankfully.
Just mention, how many, if you want to start breeding particular shrimp, how many is a good starting point to?
Well, obviously it depends on your budget, but if, I recommend 20. I think 20 shrimp's a good number to start with because, you're gonna get a good mix of male and females. Statistically speaking, if you buy 5 unsexed juvenile shrimp, it's like a 98% chance you get the 2 sexes. But it doesn't always work out that way. And then, you oftentimes when you're buying, you'll have a few losses along the way. So if you start with 20, you lose 3 or 4, you should still have a good mix of the sexes. You should have at least 3 or 4 females. You can quickly go from that 14 to, they grow exponentially. You can go from that 14 to 4 months later having 500. So, and they're pretty easy to sell,
Is it necessary to feed shrimp food or is fish food okay?
There are some people that do feed just fish food or like algae wafers sometimes. Obviously, there's a market for anything, and there is a huge market of shrimp foods and different products that claim to do this, claim to do that.
What do you use?
What do I use? I use the products that I sell. So I use I use Vin Blizzard. It's a food. It's from Vin, my buddy in Taiwan. That's one of the best breeders. It's the only food that he makes. Most companies make 12, 15, 30 different foods for shrimp. He makes one food, and that's the one I feed. I feed another food called Mineral Uptake by Dwarf Shrimp. It's got a lot of good minerals for molting for the shrimp. That's about the 2 that I feed mainly now. I don't really feed, and I only feed maybe every few days. And my tanks have a good amount of shrimp in them, but I have so much algae and biofilm for them to eat that, some tanks I'll even, I'll not feed for 4 or 5 days, drop a pellet in there, and they could care less about the pellet. They still are picking at the walls and picking at the moss, and, some tanks I could feed them every day, and I'll have a pile of 400 shrimp every day eating food. So it just kind of depends on the tank, too. Yes?
Do you think the iodine is necessary in your shrimp?
What was that?
Iodine, is that necessary?
Some of the foods have it as an additive. I know it used to be the thinking that, for the molting and everything, to have the iodine, but I don't believe it's necessary. I don't add any iodine. I don't think any of the foods I feed have iodine in it. Does like naturally occurring algae have it in it? Do they get it from there? Yeah. Yeah, so I think they kind of maybe get some of it from the tank, maybe. Yes.
Shrimp colors, they're all produced by the shrimp, or are any of them carried in the food?
Sorry, what?
The colors.
Oh, the colors?
Are
They
they
do
all
make
produced by the shrimp or
Basically, how I explain to people, genetics are gonna play the biggest role, obviously, in the color of the shrimp, but there are foods that are specific to improving the color of your blue shrimp. Foods that are specific to improving the color of your red shrimp, your yellow shrimp. There's a market for everything,
But it's produced by the shrimp. It's not taken up in the food and then transported to where it's displayed. It's actually
Metabolite,
produced by the metabolism of the shrimp.
their color,
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure.
It's not like the red keratins in angelfish, which come from the food.
Oh, like, can you alter the color of the shrimp by feeding them a certain food?
Yeah.
Not really, a little bit, but generally, the genetics are gonna play the biggest role. Like I said, there's a food that I sell that's specific for blue shrimp. Well, I can feed it to my blue shrimp tanks, and they get a little bit more blue and everything, but if they weren't a nice blue shrimp to start, that food's not gonna change them to blue. It may improve the blues that are already blue, but it's not gonna turn a faint blue shrimp into a dark blue shrimp. I know we're running over here. Keeping shrimp in a planted tank, most shrimp keepers would agree that CO2 is not good for shrimp. It causes pH fluctuations. A lot of the fertilizers aren't necessarily shrimp safe.
Well, take that, plant people.
Well, and but when I was in Washington D.C., I presented to Guapa last year, and I went to one of their members' houses, and he had a CO2 shrimp tank that was on full blast growing stuff, and he had thousands of shrimp in the tank. So I don't tell people anymore that it's not possible. I just, the main thing that I see is, people have issues with the CO2 malfunctioning. Something happened and it gasses all the shrimp, and they wake up in the morning and they're dead. I don't think the CO2 itself, as long as the shrimp are slowly adjusted to it and they're used to it, it's not gonna be a problem. Future of shrimp keeping, like I said, 2016 was award was won by somebody in the United States. Myself and another breeder were invited to Germany to judge, and we went to the Paris Shrimp Show as well right afterwards. I got engaged in Paris while we were there. In the United States, there's a lot of cooperation between breeders, where in other parts of the world, it's a lot of competition. They don't share their secrets and their tips. When Vin came over to Chicago to the aquatic experience from Taiwan, he was amazed at how all the American breeders talk to each other. We share tips with each other. We share booths with each other. At the event, it wouldn't happen in Taiwan. They're so competitive over there with all of it. And we're still, many years behind the rest of the world. Okay, so we're gonna try this. If you know shrimp and know the answers, Steve, don't guess. I don't know everybody else's background, but I'll give away some candy here real quick. So these are some of the newer shrimp. There's even newer stuff now. I mean, obviously it's ever changing. But this is made a skyfish. They're boa. They call it a boa. And if people just kind of want to throw out a number and guess what they think the price of this one shrimp is,
1,500.
everybody can throw out a number, and then at the end, whoever's closest will get a bag. We'll get a bag of candy.
5,000.
15,000.
12,000.
Nobody knows the dollar.
Okay, well, it's
know?
about $4,000. So who was closest? Did anybody say 4? Back in the back? Tossing that back to him. And when I was in Germany, we went to the Haribo factory, and I'm addicted to those things. This is a metallic boa, same shrimp, just different pattern. This is they call it purple metallic Nanasi Pinto. This actually has a problem. You can see its carapace is short up front. It's not covering its gills. Technically, you should cull that shrimp. You don't want to pass that on to offspring, but some people don't. It's called a dragon blood. It was created by Uwe Zeitler in Germany. We'll do the same thing. People can guess the price of this guy, and whoever's closest will throw some candy at him.
3,000.
2,000.
About $250. Who's back there?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How long does it take to get to the point where you're selling this kind of breeding rights?
as like as a line of shrimp, as like, you know, these still probably don't breed 100% true. Usually when you can get to about 80-90%, that's when they consider like the line developed enough to sell it. I mean, some people may sell it before them, but generally speaking, you know, you want at least 60-70% before you can name it. And yeah, this probably took 3 to 5 years to develop. And
that one took him 7 years to develop. I talk to this breeder quite often. It's been a project of his for 7 years.
Wow.
So don't quit your day job.
He's probably, you know, probably at least 10 to 15 generations. It's about every four months or so you can do another generation.
Have you created any of your own strains, of your own specific?
I haven't.
No.
I haven't. We're really far behind in the United States here. They're like 10 years ahead of us everywhere else. So they're working with stuff. They have stuff over there that we still haven't seen yet, like in Taiwan and stuff, that they're working on perfecting before they release.
And you do selective breeding yourself, like selective breeding and culling, you do that, practice that as well, or you just kind of keep it?
I do it a little bit. Now I'm more of just I'm trying to maintain, I'm redoing my shrimp room so I don't have all the time in the world, you know, I don't have all the tanks to maintain certain things, so I sold off a good chunk of my colonies to make room for certain things, and then I'll bring shrimp back in and start doing that again. I'll be done just now. Shoot through everything here. Okay, we'll do this. This is called the Calcio bee. This is the same breeder, Louis Zeitler, the guy before. He created this. It actually looks like the Calcio flower, which I wasn't familiar with, but I saw a picture of it, and it actually, its colors look just like it. So we'll do the same thing. Any guesses on what these guys cost? We'll go current price. Obviously, these have been around a little bit longer, and they breed really well, so they're not as expensive as they once were, but we'll go current price.
$575. $50.
800.
$50. Who said 50? Oh, 2 people said it. Well, here, 2 people get back to me.
Oh.
This is Vin created this shrimp. It's Star's Galaxy fishbone. They call it the fishbone because if you looked at it from the top, that pattern that runs down its head into its tail looks like a fishbone. The fish, you know, the head and the. We'll do this one too real quick. These have come down in price, but I mean I think they're still really expensive. What do you guys think this guy costs?
$3,000.
2,500.
3,000.
$80.
$95.
They're about $600. Some good sources, USA Freshwater Shrimps and Plants on Facebook. It's a good group. The Breeders and Keepers magazines is a shrimp-specific magazine. All Things Shrimp on Facebook, Extreme Shrimpers, Shrimp Spot. I'm always accessible on Facebook. I mean, like I said, this is my job now. I get yelled at by my fiance all the time for being on my phone constantly, but it's always answering questions and helping people. I have no problem helping people out if they have questions. I'm easy to find on Facebook. My logo, I mean, there's not too many Erik Lucases, and not that spell it with a K, not a C. I'm a K, and my business logo is my Facebook picture, so I'm easy to find.
So where are you based?
Marysville, a little north of Sacramento.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
Oh,
somewhat
wow, you're
local.
local.
We'll skip through that one. One thing I always get asked is how the shrimp contests work. It's basically how you would expect like a dog show to work. There's different categories. You enter 4 to 5 shrimp in your group, and then there's about 10 different categories. It depends on the show. Some shows, like in Germany, there was 18 categories. In the USA, I believe there was 9 or 10 categories. And then there's judges, you know, that they're usually, you know, people that have been around the hobby for a while. And they go and they grade the shrimp. They grade them on size, how much each shrimp looks like each other. You enter a group of 4 or 5, and then the judges pick the best 3 usually to judge. They pick the 3 out of that group, and then they judge those 3, and they base it on, you know, every category is different. Certain categories look for certain different things, but usually, you know, the size of the shrimp is important. Too small, they lose points. You know, they look at the saturation of the colors, the leg color, the tail color. How much?
Only adults?
That's the goal. If you enter smaller shrimp, you lose points. They usually have to be at least 2 centimeters. So if you enter smaller shrimp, you can get disqualified, or you just get knocked on the point so bad for the size of the shrimp. There's only 5 or 6 categories, so if you get a 0 in one category, you're not gonna win. So then at the end of the show, the first place of each category, between the judges, they announce who won first in every category, and then the judges go back and they grade all the first place shrimp. They give them a number score, and then the one with the most first place votes, like first place is worth 5 points, let's say, second place is worth 3, and third is worth 1. They add up the points, and then the shrimp that has the most points gets the best in show. And then that's the most prestigious award to win at the event. And then the second most prestigious is the audience favorite usually, where it's just, people that are coming to the show, walking around, vote on which one they think's the nicest looking. And then after it's all done, usually when you win the main award, you get a nice big trophy. You get, and then when you win the smaller categories, like when I won in Chicago, I got a nice little glass medallion that said first place, my category, and then a piece of a certificate saying I won first place.
How much does it cost to enter the shrimp in the show?
For the USA show, I believe it was $35 if you would let them keep the shrimp and raffle them at the end, and the proceeds would go towards the competition, or it was like $45 if you wanted to take them home.
So Larissa, when's your first shrimp show?
Okay, that is it.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I was not bribed to do this video. I hope you guys subscribe, like it, yeah, enjoy. Hope this was informative.